actually isn't the case. We actually use all of our five senses when we experience food. So if you imagine you have a bar of chocolate in front of you, before you've even touched it, you've assessed what it looks like and whether you want to eat it or not. So visual impact is actually very, very important. Then you might pick it up, you might break a chunk off, hear the snap of the chocolate, and then when you put it in your mouth, lots of different things start to happen. The feeling and the temperature of the chocolate in the mouth, the sound it makes when you bite down into it, and then all the lovely flavour sensations and taste sensations start to interact with all the receptors on your tongue and all the receptors in your nose, which then send signals to your brain to tell you what you just perceived and whether you like it or not. So our brain, even though all of our senses are separate, they're all different organs in our body, our brain integrates all the information from the different sensory inputs to ensure that our experience of eating is always multisensory. So I'm just going to go through as quick as I can, because I've only got 5 minutes, each of the senses and how they contribute to our perception of flavour. So I'm going to start with sight, because even though we don't buy foods solely on the way they look, it's most likely the first sense to be brought into the decision-making process. So our sense of, or the visual appearance of a product, be it the colour, the shape, or whether it's carbonated, can actually have a major role on our perception of how the product's going to taste. So if one food tastes or looks darker than the other, people often rate it as having a stronger sensation just because it's basically different colour. Or if you look at the two egg yolks on the screen, when we ask people which one they prefer, a lot of people say that they prefer the darker yellow one because it means that it's higher, better quality, and perhaps the flavour sensation is going to be higher or strengthened also. But we also, on a subconscious level, associate certain colours with certain tastes. So if you look at the 4 jellies I have on the screen, and I want you to think about which one would taste salty, which one would you choose? And most people that we ask would generally choose the white one. If you are asked to choose the one that tastes sweet, people would generally say red. If you're thinking of the taste, basically taste sour, people would generally say green. And if you wanted something that was bitter, people generally, when we ask them, pick the black one. So even though you don't know anything about them, you haven't tried them, you're subconsciously building expectations in your brain of what the jelly would taste like solely based on its colour. And researchers have also found that even the shape of a product, be it the food, the packaging, or even indeed the plate in which the food has been served, can actually influence your flavour perception. And researchers in the cross-modal lab in the UK found that when they asked a group of consumers to try different chocolates of different levels of cocoa content, so from very, very milk chocolate to very, very dark, bitter chocolate, and then to mark on the line whether the perception they were perceiving was more strongly associated with the round amoeba type shape or the kind of more angular pointy type shape. And they found that the majority of people rated the kind of softer chocolates with closer to the softer shape, and the more angular, more stronger sensation like bitter type chocolates with the more pointy shape. And when you think about it, if you consume something that's very strong, like something very bitter like coffee or the bubbles in a beer, it can actually make you recoil a bit and you make like a scrunchy face, and it's almost like an angular face. So it's not surprising that our perception of very strong sensations is more symbolized by angular type shapes. And the reason this is important is because if you're developing a food product, you might want to think about the type of packaging used, the type of color, or even how it feels in the hand. Again, all through our sense of sight. So, okay, we all know that our sense of taste is obviously one of the most important factors influencing our choice, but to really understand just how multisensory eating and drinking is, it's important to know that our sense of taste, which we perceive in our tongue, actually contributes quite little to our overall flavour perception. So if you stick your tongue out and look at it in the mirror, which I'm sure we've all done from at some stage or another, and you'll see these little bumps on your tongue, these are called the papillae. And these are basically our taste buds. And within the taste buds, we have what are called taste receptors. And we only have receptors on our tongue to perceive 5 different sensations: sweet, sour, salt, bitter, and this savoury taste called umami. So if you were to block your nose, you can do this at home, you can hold it really tight, and if I was to give you an apple and a pineapple, you will taste sweetness, you will taste sourness, but you wouldn't be able to differentiate between the two. Well, if you were blindfolded, you wouldn't be able to differentiate between the two of them, because you can literally only detect 5 different sensations on your tongue. However, if you were to release your hand from your nose, that's when you start detecting all the fruity and the pineapple and apple and all the other lovely for sensation, and that's because our sense of smell has been activated. So while our tongue can only detect 5 different qualities or sensations, our sense of smell, actually we have hundreds of receptors in our nose that can pick up on the stimuli in a product. So that's where you get your vanilla and your melon and your pineapple and your roasted. We don't have receptors in our tongues for this, but we have receptors in our nose. So when you have a really bad cold, you say, oh, I can't really taste very well. It's actually not what you're tasting. It's not your sense of taste that's gone. It's just because there's mucus at the back of your nose, and then all the stimuli in the product can't reach all the receptors. So it's really your sense of smell that's really important in flavour perception. And food companies are now starting to really create multisensory products. And I have an example of this up here, whereby in the US they installed petrol pumps in an experiment, and this little screen that flashed a 15-second ad about coffee. And they also had installed this kind of aroma or something, that a device that emitted the smell of freshly brewed coffee. So obviously you're standing there, you're filling your car with petrol, you're seeing coffee, you're smelling coffee. What you go in and buy? Coffee. So they found that their sales increased like something like 300% over the 6 months that the study was being conducted, simply by targeting our sense of smell. So yeah, and they're all doing this now in the UK, where McCain's have installed multi-sensory billboards that emit the smell of baked potato as you're waiting for your bus home. So our sense of touch is almost one of the most undervalued or unappreciated senses. But when you think about it, our skin, which is obviously on the surface of our body, is like one huge sheet of tactile receptors that allows us to interact with our environment and indeed with food. And it's with our sense of touch that we perceive the texture of food. And texture is extremely important, such as the creaminess, the tenderness, the juiciness, the oiliness. And food companies are now using changes in-mouth texture to sell a product or to market a product. For instance, you might describe a piece of chocolate as having a crisp first bite with a creamy melting center and a lasting smoothness. So you're using the actual breakdown of texture in the mouth to sell the product, which is actually sounds much more appetizing. And another example, of course, is not just about what's happening in your mouth, but how something feels in our hand can actually have a big impact. And the example I use here is gin and tonic. So you used to be able to go into any pub in Ireland and ask for gin and tonic, and they would just automatically pour it in a slim gin glass. And now if you go in and ask for gin and tonic, they'll say, well, what gin do you want? And there's so many beautiful flavors and types of gins, but the most importantly is they'll all serve them in this big fishbowl glass. And if you didn't get the fishbowl glass, I can guarantee you the experience wouldn't be as good. And you can see people walking around the pubs now and nightclubs in Ireland, that we all holding, anyone with gin and tonic drinkers, we all holding this glass. And it's the glass that's really adds to the whole sensation. Of course, the gin is beautiful and the tonic is beautiful, but it's the glass that really makes it. And then finally, hearing. Of course, we don't think that the sound of food is important, but our brain would recognize if it wasn't there. For example, when you open a bottle of champagne or a fizzy drink or a beer, it's that psh sound. Well, if that wasn't there, the experience wouldn't necessarily be as good. It really enhances the overall multisensory experience. And then, of course, biting into a Magnum, that classic crack of the chocolate. And if you watch the ads on TV, I really do think they make it louder. But you want to hear that crack, because again, we don't think it's contributing, but on a subconscious level it is. And of course, the crispiness. If you bite into a crisp and it's extremely crunchy, and they've done studies where they showed like the louder the crunch, the more the product actually liked, and the more it's perceived as fresher. So that was in a very quick nutshell the 5 senses and how they contribute to flavour. A flavour perception, and I would like to, if anyone have any questions?